I gotta admit, going into 2025, I really wasn't expecting Death Stranding 2 to be one of the top games that I thought I would play this year, but I gotta admit, Hideo Kojima proves once again why you never underestimate the master. Well, what's up, gamer guys? Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to give you another one of my awesome game reviews. This time I'll be going over my review for the latest game in the long lineup of Hideo Kojima masterpieces, and this one being titled Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. And if you do happen to enjoy my review by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep track of me on my future reviews. And if you have any ideas for future videos you would like me to do in the near future, please let me know what you would like, whether it be a ranking, a review, or just a discussion. I will try to get it up to you as soon as I can. So, Death Stranding 2. I was someone who was probably in the minority of people that actually really did enjoy the first game to a certain degree, and I really didn't expect that they would make a sequel given the kind of mixed response that they got. But heck, now that I've had a chance to play Death Stranding 2, I have to say, overall, I had a fantastic time with this game. It ended up being far better than I was expecting, and this was someone who went into 2025 with the high anticipation that Doom The Dark Ages would be probably my best game that I would play this year, and Death Stranding managed to eclipse that in a number of different departments, and heck, I'm actually quite happy about that. There's no question this is going to be one of the main contenders for Game of the Year for 2025, and just overall, I had just an amazing time. I really was not expecting to have as much fun with it as I did. But heck, I'd like to stop wasting any more time and just go over to the individual departments as for why Death Stranding 2 ended up being as great as it is. Starting off with the story, of course. The main story for Death Stranding 2 on the Beach takes place 11 months after the events of the first game, and during that time, Sam Bridges has gone into hiding looking after his child Lou. One day, his ally named Fragile, who now works for a new organization, appears and recruits Sam to connect Mexico to the chiral network. Sam agrees and leaves Lou in the care of Fragile while he goes out to connect multiple facilities. Upon completing this task, the former head of the Homo demons named Higgs stages an attack on Fragile and Lou, and in the process, Lou is killed. Wanting to discover answers on how Higgs has managed to return from the other side with a new and more powerful mechanical army, Sam joins Fragile's crew and travels to the continent of Australia to connect it to the chiral network as well. During his travels in Australia, Sam continues to see visions of a mysterious man from the past, and with the help of his old and new allies, learns more about Lou's origins with the BB Project and what can be done with the still coming Death Stranding event that is due to take place soon. Right out of the gate, I can confirm that the entire cast is phenomenal, and everyone connected to the main set of characters that you will interact with over the course of the game is fully realized. Nobody's here is treated as some random character that is just inserted here to take place. Everyone you encounter has their own story and reasons to be here, and all the actors within the cast give an amazing performance, easily worthy of a AAA title. Now, for the longest time since I started playing PlayStation, I've always been a story-driven gamer, and literally right out of the gate, Death Stranding 2 absolutely fixed the biggest issue that I had with the very first Death Stranding game. Because even though the first Death Stranding game really had a great story by the end, in my experience with how the gameplay is constructed, it really didn't start getting going until I would say the last third of the game, and that is absolutely not the case for Death Stranding 2. The game's story really gets going near the beginning of the game and really gets the momentum going, and that was something I really did appreciate. And on top of that, the story is also considerably easier to follow. I mean, there's a lot of elements in this game that even I don't fully understand, but this game really breaks down the primary story that it's trying to bring, and it brings a lot of elements that aren't necessarily revealed. They're hinted at over the course of the story and the game, but it doesn't really give you the full picture until the end. But it does give you enough to kind of start piecing things as you go. That way you're always really intrigued. And on top of that, there are a number of side stories that are actually very, very rewarding if you choose to take time to actually go out and explore them. Now, I will say that there is a bit of an issue with a number of the weirdness, because there's always a number of weird elements when it comes to Kojima, but for the most part, they only really appear if you kind of go out and seek them out yourself. But for this time, I would say by the end, there are a number of kind of elements that I felt were very, very unnecessary and just kind of stopped the game. For example, much like Metal Gear Solid 4, there's a moment where there's like a big information dump, and then out of nowhere, there's like this dance number, and it's unavoidable. Now, I felt like moments like that really kind of interrupted the tone that the game was setting up for. Now trust me, weirdness for a Kojima game is nothing new, but I always felt that if it was forced or unavoidable, that could be a bit of a flaw. And that's something that even I myself found myself kind of questioning. I was like, he could have taken this out and we would have ended up in the same place as he's trying to get us to. Now, if I go out and explore and start doing a bunch of side things and I encounter some weirdness, that's perfectly fine. That feels perfect with the world that he has constructed. But when it's forced and unavoidable, that, as I think, is something that was an issue even for someone like me, who is a big fan. And I do think that when it comes to a number of the story elements, some of the characters as they're presented perhaps aren't carrying the type of... Put it like this, there's a number of characters that have really, really tragic backgrounds, but you wouldn't think that with how they're presented and how they're interacting with the rest of the cast of characters. You kind of think they would be more broken of his character, or maybe they're just suppressing it. And I felt like there are a lot of characters that are like that, and that in itself is a flaw. Their performances and how they're presented, it should be perfectly fine, and how in-depth they are in terms of their individual backstories. But I just felt that a lot of the characters perhaps weren't quite as dynamic as I was hoping for. But that wasn't really too much of a bad thing. That was just something that I noticed personally that it kind of bothered me from time to time, but overall it didn't really hurt the overall presentation and everything that the primary message that the game was trying to present, which I thought was a really, really good one. When it comes to Death Stranding 2's gameplay, much like the first game, it's an open-world exploration game with its core gameplay functions centering around delivering packages from one point to another. Delivering packages allows you to establish connections with a variety of different groups. By improving your relationship of star ratings with these individual groups, they will be providing you with resources and helpful tools that will make your progression through the game much easier. There are a number of new ways to travel throughout the game apart from just building highways, as your primary ship can be used to help transport you from one spot of the map to another, while carrying packages and resources, which is something you couldn't do in the first game. You also now have the ability to construct a monorail that can now allow you to transport extremely large deliveries, which can be quite useful if you're interested in building long stretches of highway all at once across multiple points. You'll even have different vehicles this time around that you can customize in only different ways, because you can attach now weapons to engage targets. When it comes to combat, you will encounter 4 different types of enemies over the course of the game. You have armed survivalists, who are a much more dangerous variation of the mules that you encountered in the first game, that are not only equipped with armor and advanced weapons, but have established bases that you will end up having to engage from time to time to not only recover cargo, but also rescue civilians. There are now a new set of different forms of BTs that are a lot bigger than they were in the first game, with newer types of enemies being ghost mechs, which now come in a variety of different models that can attack you in a number of different ways and in very large numbers that can easily overwhelm you. There is even one section that will have you take part in a high-speed chase shootout with a variation of the ghost mechs that I found rather entertaining and a wonderful addition to show just how much the gameplay style has improved over the first game. Now, the 4th variation of enemy is a bit unusual, as they only appear during the mini-boss engagements that you encounter against the mysterious Neil character, and they are his skull units that are under his command. Now, they're pretty easy to deal with, but Neil's ability to move quickly from one spot to another while ordering his skull units to engage you really places you in some rather interesting situations, and during some of these mini-boss engagements, the level design actually presents quite unique situations that I wasn't expecting. The game will also grant you a great amount of freedom that when it comes to how you wish to deal with each of these enemies. When it comes to survivalists, you can choose to go all Rambo and gun everybody down, or you can take a quieter approach and simply snipe targets from a safe distance using a tranquilized sniper rifle. When it comes to the bees, you have a variety of different tools, like you can choose to cut their umbilical cords, or later on in the game you will have access to a special type of grenade that will allow you to capture BTs like Pokemon, then summon them to fight alongside you in specific battles. And when it comes to the ghost mechs, if you happen to have your ship in a nearby area, you can actually request artillery fire to come down and reduce their numbers to make the situation a little bit easier for you to deal with. Death Stranding also provides a progression system that will allow you to access to a number of perks that can provide you a number of advantages in different areas of the gameplay style. Whether it's exploration or combat, Kojima has really succeeded in providing a unique experience that allows you to progress through the game however you choose, and using the chiral network system to play alongside other players is really one of the best gameplay mechanics that the first game has, and it actually works quite well this time around. If you choose to take a bit of your time to build structures for other players to have access to, it actually makes things much easier for other players that are following your path. For example, There was a specific spot near a river that I decided to build a local bridge for, and as minor as this action may seem, it actually made me feel really good to see just how many people that one action helped others over time. You can even leave weapons and helpful tools in specific locations knowing that it will provide aid for those that need it, and this is automatic, and it really helped me during the mass majority of large-scale battles that I encountered, providing a level of connectivity that is really unmatched when it comes to a single-player only game that comes with no multiplayer. Kojima is an absolute master of creating a unique game experience and adding all kinds of Easter eggs and callbacks to other games that I actually wasn't expecting. There are even a number of out-of-nowhere entertaining moments that are quite unique, but I can admit that if you're not familiar with Kojima's work, then this kind of can feel out of place. And even for someone like me who was a fan of Kojima's work for over 15 years, even though I understand his style, that too could actually somewhat be a bit of an issue from time to time. Now, when it comes to the gameplay structure of it strictly being primarily about delivering packages, this is the one element that's going to make or break anyone who tries to play this game. If you are someone who really did not like the idea of delivering packages for the vast majority of the game, and this is something that you absolutely should not play. And I don't think the game does enough to kind of invite anyone who isn't a fan of that particular core element to want to immediately be a fan. I think that it's a plus that you don't really have to have played the first game to really get into the second game, but that in itself is the core element. Now, it's nice that there's a number of extra activities and extra objectives that you can do apart from just delivering packages, but that in itself is the core function. And I don't think the game it added other elements, but I don't think they were able to make the core element any more enjoyable because at times it was rather annoying. It did get repetitive, and it also didn't help that the repetitive nature of the packaging worked with the pace of the story, because the best way I can describe this is that the way that the story is structured, it is only really told after a specific main package delivery. Now there's like secondary packages and side packages, and then there's main packages. And every single time you delivered a main package, it would give you a little bit of a cutscene. But this would rinse and repeat all the way throughout the entire game. And I just felt that was a little bit of annoyance, because it was more annoying in the first game, but it is almost just as annoying here in the first game, and that can be a bit of an issue. This, again, the whole delivering packaging thing is going to be a make or break for anyone trying to even be supposedly interested in this game, and I just don't think that core element is something that is in fact fun. Now, yeah, you can find little creative ways to kind of make the very process of delivering packaging a little bit more amusing, but to its core, that repetitive nature can get annoying if the story itself wasn't as good. But I do believe that this is something that only Kojima could have gotten away with. I think if any other game developer had tried a primary structured gameplay like that with just delivering packaging, it wouldn't have worked. But because it's Kojima and he has all these extra elements that he has certainly added to the gameplay style, I do think that it is enough that it is somewhat tolerable this time around and wasn't quite as annoying as it was in the first game. So kudos for him for that. When it comes to game design, Decima continues to be one of the most impressive gaming engines ever created, providing visuals that really take advantage of the full power of the PlayStation 5. The use of it allows Death Stranding to a level of attention to detail that is simply unmatched by any other game that I've played over the last number of years. This game ran incredibly smooth, and while I was only playing on my standard PlayStation 5, I'm sure that those that happen to play this on the PlayStation 5 Pro will have an even better experience. When it comes to the game's soundtrack, it's quite interesting that Kojima was able to gather such a unique collection of different tracks that begins to play at specific moments to not only add to the moment of the current situation, but prepare you for an upcoming important moment in the story. There are even tracks on here that I found myself getting addicted to, and with that function being able to create an actual playlist that you can customize to your own design, you can actually find yourself picking a number of songs that you were sure to enjoy. Now, for me personally, me being a hardcore Kojima fan, I would easily say that being a major improvement over the first game, this easily ranks in my top 5 favorite Hideo Kojima direct games of all time. I would easily put it as probably number 3 or 4, even compared to some of the Metal Gear games that he was involved with. And there was certainly enough potential here that if things had worked out a little bit better, I would have given this a 10 out of 10. And it easily probably could have eclipsed something like Metal Gear Solid 4, taking the number 3 spot and being one of my all-time favorite video games of all time. But I do not think that this is a perfect game. There are a number of flaws that I think were just almost unavoidable. It is a masterpiece in the story sense. But again, that core gameplay function and his ability to kind of add elements that I think were unnecessary and kind of ruin the tone and pace of the story and message that he's trying to present is in itself a flaw. It wasn't quite as bad as it was in the first game because he did fix that story. He did fix the story element and made it a lot more simpler and easier to follow. So that is a major improvement. But again, that core gameplay, I think in itself, doesn't provide the fun factor. I think the fun factor is in your freedom to explore and to interact with the world. But how you progress through the game, that in itself is a little bit flawed and something that even me being a fan, I had a problem with. But I do think that anyone who did happen to really enjoy the first game or didn't have a problem with it is going to have a good time. And while I think some fans who perhaps didn't like the first game would have a better time this time around, if you can get past that one element, I do think that Death Stranding 2 will provide a very, very fun experience with a phenomenal story that is something I absolutely do plan to replay many times in the near future. So overall, if I had to give Death Stranding 2 a rating, for the first game, I gave it like an A, but for me, it was really a 7, but I gave Hideo Kojima a free extra point. But this time, he's going to have to earn every single point that he gets, and he certainly did prove this time. So overall, I would give Death Stranding 2 a 9 out of 10. An absolute must-own for anyone who is pretty much a fan of Kojima's work or is really interested in a very fascinating story that has a very important message that I think we can all learn from. So that is my review of Death Stranding 2. If you happen to really enjoy my review, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if you happen to play this game as well. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you guys next time.